Hey guys, so Blizzard just announced the new support hero for Season 4, the one that had infamous quotes about how, like, supposedly they're cute like Mercy and not cute like a dog, which is potentially like kind of a weird misquote from a stream or whatever, but we knew this was coming. We knew that this one and the next one are supposed to both be supports, and I've been looking forward to that because I'm a support main, and I want to see just more options in general, especially since I just don't really like playing as Kiriko very much, so I haven't gotten a new character that I really like playing since, like, Baptiste years ago. But as you can kind of get a glimpse out here, talking with Toaster and Bird and Andrew and so on, we are so far concerned. We'll start by going ahead and just watching the reveal.
Press the attack!
A little care always helps.
Don't give up! This is our fight to win!
Being down just makes the comeback all the more exciting. Let's perk you up. You're blossoming. Lucky I was here, huh? My platform is here. Hand forward. Shall we do this together? Leave this to me. Life unbridled. Spend every moment growing into who you truly are.
And there we go, new character. He's a support. So let's start with the good. One, he's confirmed as being pansexual. That's fun. I know people scoff at this on all levels. Like, there's people who are queer who don't like these sort of like tokeny gestures, although I don't know how much you can really expect from a game that's essentially just like a fighting game without a story. It's just a bunch of characters that have a background and then they go play the shooting match. And then there's people that don't want to have queer characters in their games, and, you know, fuck them. There are two frustrating conversations that happen that try to remove characters like this. One is this idea that you have to justify any inclusion of diversity, like the diversity has to serve a purpose in order for it to exist, which reinforces the cis heteronormative white norm that everyone's a straight white dude by default, and then they're only a woman or they're gay when they're specifically justified in the narrative somehow, which is not how people work. People just are things. They have a gender, they have a nationality, they have a sexual orientation, they're on some spectrum of neurotypical or neurodivergence. That's just how humans exist, and literally you could randomize these characters and that would be more valid than treating white straight people as the default and then having to justify every single deviation from that. That's just a bullshit argument in its own. Then there's the idea that you need to justify being a queer character by, like, really earning it. Like, this argument that's like do it right or don't do it at all when it comes to diversity. That's also stupid, because that once again assumes some kind of level of quality is required in order to represent any sort of, like, anyone outside of the perceived default. And that's stupid, because once it's just a different level of having to earn our place in media. It's stupid. No, it's great. It's great that he's pansexual, and I like his design. This is fun. This is just incredibly funny to me, but fucking, like, in response to the whole Mercy is cute or a dog or whatever the fuck conversation, I was like, surprised the next cute Overwatch support is a twink, as a joke, last month. And so I have been shocked by my correctness. Not necessarily. He's clearly muscular, so by the standards of anything, he's not really a twink. But the extent to which we got a relatively skinny for a fictional drawn character, male and queer character, is just a level of being on the mark I was not fully prepared for. But anyway, let's go through his actual kit. So first of all, he has a heal. It's kind of strange. He charges it up and throws it at people over and over again. And we're already having a rough start here. Let's see, we can go over. I'm going to use other people's videos here because that's all I can do, because I'm not a super cool, in the loop, high audience, like, official Blizzard influencer, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be buddy-buddy with Blizzard specifically anyway, like, not a great company to begin with. But it means that I don't have access to this character, even though I've seen so much about this character, because only specific people are given access. But what we see here from the healing is kind of worrying, as Flats is pointing out here. Like, it is a very slow thing where you get this little indicator in the middle of the screen that charges up to a 65, and then you release it. So there's a tempo to it. And there's a few things here where, one, it's just kind of tedious. It, like, just conceptually, thinking about using this sounds annoying compared to shooting people as Anna, or spraying people as Moira, or any other way people heal in this game. The only one that comes close I can think of is Kiriko, which is somebody who doesn't feel good to me on healing, because you point at people and then you launch these talismans at them, which have a travel time, and they supposedly home perfectly, and it always works, but it's hard for me to trust it. And, like, in your head, you know, oh, they'll heal for like 70, so you just, 70 should be enough. I'll volley at them, and then I'll turn to my other targets and see who else I need to keep up, and, like, multitask, and just trust that they'll definitely reach their destination. Because if you sit there and stare at the health bar the whole time and make sure that they got healed enough, then that's downtime, essentially. And so that I just don't love the feeling of that compared to shooting somebody with Anna's sniper rifle. So I have not loved Kiriko so far. Here, this seems like a similar, like, approach of, like, trying to make every single support have, like, a unique firing mechanic for their heal that isn't a repeat of any other ones. Kind of like how Baptiste had a regular hit scan gun, but his heal was a arcing volley thing, like, because it's like, well, that none of the other healers quite work like that, so that's how his works. Like, it seems like they're trying to run through the entire list of ideas so everyone has a unique firing mechanic, and this one's kind of gimmicky. It just seems frustrating to pull off. You kind of have to keep flexing at this tempo over and over again, and it caps out at only 65 despite taking a while to charge. It's a delayed thing, so you can't instantly react when somebody does need healing, which is its own worry. But perhaps most damning of all from my perspective is that you can see for the little 1-2 here, it's a gun. It's like Mercy, he has a heal gun and a gun, and I don't know why they did that, because Kiriko and Baptiste both have alt fire, where they use one button to heal and one button to attack, and this guy seems to also just have one button for healing and one button for attacking, but they're on two separate weapons he has to equip separately, and I can only think that that is that case because cosmetically his attack looks different. It has, like, needles coming out of his wrist, and they wanted to maybe visually show it differently by having him equip it separately. I don't like it. I do not like any character who has to switch to a different weapon in this game in basically any context. I think that it's best handled if you can make it an alt fire basically every single time. I just think it's really clunky to have to change weapons in this game when that's almost never a mechanic for almost any characters, especially when, like, the examples that come to mind are, like, Mercy, who rarely uses her pistol, and Torb, when he specifically stops dead in his tracks to heal his turret with his hammer for the most part. Like, it's just outside of the controls of how this game usually works, and I'm just annoyed at the idea of having to swap weapons every time I want to switch between attacking and healing when nobody else has to deal with that. Coupled with the fact that his healing is a single target, manually charged, delayed reaction thing, means I'm going to kind of be just worried switching between attack and healing in general. But this isn't my main point. I just kind of got fixated on here for a little bit. Here's a concern. Parting gift. He drops a health kit when he dies, which is, like, kind of like a fun, like, whoopsie doodle, I fed, but here's a little helper to keep you guys going for your teammates. It heals them for 250. But what worries me is that it heals your enemies. So, like, You're incentivizing that the enemy DPS or Winston or whoever specifically dive Lifeweaver and kill him first, because when they kill Lifeweaver, if they're a close range character like Reaper or potentially Sombra or especially Winston, they get healed by his health kit when he dies. So even if their supports don't have their back in that exact moment, they get a pretty chunky heal on top of any other level of self-preservation they have. So it essentially gives the enemy team this Genji-like momentum mechanic where, just like how Genji gets his cooldown reset when he gets a kill, like people who kill Lifeweaver get a pick-me-up to help them keep killing the other team, even though Lifeweaver's death is already a disadvantage for the team that he was on. I understand the idea of giving him a health kit that his team can pick up, but having the enemy also be able to pick it up just feels horribly wrong to me. What a choice to make. That's still not my primary point, though. The gun is a gun. It's like a SMG kind of spread thing. It's fine. It seems to work to an extent where he's at least on some level threatening, but it's not like he's not exactly a DPS, obviously. Pedal platform. He gets to throw out this cool looking, we're now on Emong's channel. I'm looking for Orisa as the example here. But he gets to throw out this platform that specifically lets him interrupt people's ults in some cases, or create a platform for safety, and that's just kind of neat. This is neat. It has very specific counterplay, and this video is worth checking out because of how long it is, but there are so many interactions to check out, like, oh, if you put this platform over a Ashe dynamite, it blocks the dynamite. That's interesting. That's like just a number of interactions you'd have to like individually learn, just because of how complicated it gets. But the real thing we're getting into here is that freaking life grip, as you saw in the trailer when he saves Symmetra, looks really cool in that context, doesn't it? It puts a bubble around her. She's invulnerable, I think, for the duration of that, and it pulls her a pretty big distance very quickly. That is very far away, and obviously it's an unmitigated good thing in this scenario because she's being saved from certain death that Symmetra as a character has 0 ways of rescuing herself from. No notes. But the implications here are kind of terrifying. Like, I had my suspicions immediately. First of all, everyone on the planet immediately thought the same thing when they saw this, which is, what if the roles were switched and Lifeweaver's jumping off the cliff and pulls an ally to them? And yes, for the record, you can pull someone off a cliff with you, which is just unparalleled levels of griefing of your teammates. Like, gameplay sabotage is just not as much of a thing in this game. You can AFK, like just not play, obviously. You can refuse to heal certain people. You can play badly on purpose. But generally speaking, your level of throwing is mostly tied to just you as a character. It's pretty bad to have 1/5 of your team throwing, so any level of throwing is pretty bad. But having the ability to just kill your teammates is a bit higher of a level of gameplay sabotage than was previously allowed in the case of Mei wall blocking passages and trolling your teammates. Like, that was probably one of the worst things that could happen before, and this just is severe. But that's fine. They could patch that potentially. I imagine kind of like a Dark Souls style system where, like, you know how when you jump off a cliff, your bloodstain that has all your souls on it is always on a safe ledge, except for some niche glitch cases. So they could make it so that if you jump off a cliff and life grips someone to you, it could pull them back to the last ledge you were on instead of into the hole if you jump in like Elios well or something, just to prevent that level of specific trolling. So I don't see that as the end of the world, especially since, like, that's somebody actively choosing to throw. That will be, I'm sure, completely reportable as gameplay sabotage, and that person will potentially be suspended or banned for that behavior, incentivizing doing exactly that all the time. So I'm not that worried about that. What I am worried about is the nebulous part of gameplay sabotage. Because here's the thing. Here's what I've picked up about this game over the course of playing it in the lower ranks for years, and this is the thing that, like, the videos I've seen about this character have not stressed this enough. They've talked about the cool parts of this ability, which, yes, it's very powerful. You can pull somebody out of a life or death situation, rescue them, heal them up. You can even pull them from low ground to high ground, either to save them or even just to help them reposition because they want to get up there and they're not a character that can quickly get to high ground. Like, there's a number of gameplay of helpful things here where just platforming in general, like that, both his life grip thing and his pedal both allow people to get around the level in ways they normally don't, and that is unique utility, and that is cool. But you don't consent to being pulled to him. And that's going to get deeply frustrating very quickly in the ranks that none of the YouTubers are in. Because all of the Overwatch YouTubers are like masters and grandmasters players. They play this game all the time. They specifically are very high ranked. And that's part of why anyone respects what they say and watches what they do. But I'm here to speak to the lived experience of most Overwatch players, which is being in the middle ranks and having to deal with what's going to be like to have somebody who can reposition you at will without your consent every 20 seconds for the entire match, whenever they feel like it. So here is the moment where I felt fear, and the exact thing that I was worried about was confirmed. Let's get to Winston over here. This is scary. Winston does a jumpy on the Emong video, and then you just pull him back. That's deeply frustrating, isn't it? That's horrifying. So a few things here. One, dive tanks rely on careful cooldown management in order to survive. If you interrupt their cooldown and decide you know better and position them differently, not only have you undone the mobility cooldown they just spent and they don't get it back, but also now they just like... Now it's just gone, like they're just in some position you chose to put them in, and they're potentially getting wiped out. And it's just very concerning to me as a character like D.Va or Winston or Wrecking Ball, especially Wrecking Ball, to have any kind of like personal groove of what I think I'm gonna do. Oh yeah, also Doomfist. Doomfist and Wrecking Ball especially. Anytime you think you know what you're up to and you have a plan and you're planning the sequence of things you're gonna do, it's bad enough when you get stunned or crowd controlled in some way by the enemy, but to have a support that can just decide, no, you're over here now. What if that support's a bronze? What if they're silver? Like, with the level of matchmaking we've had lately, people have been two entire like metal ranks apart from each other. You could be a gold tank with a bronze support that decided they know better about how you're supposed to play, and you can't do anything about that. You are literally vulnerable to their behavior the entire match. And like, they don't have to be intentionally gameplay sabotaging, but telling the difference between a bad player that is just in having a disagreement with you about how to play the game and versus like just someone who's being a dick for fun will be almost impossible. Like, they could, like, a case could be made like, yeah, I think you're just playing too aggressive, you need to come back here, or you're too far ahead of the team, or we need you in the back line for some reason. Like, they're in bronze for a reason, so like they might think that, or they might be someone spamming the cooldown just to fuck with their tank because they got tilted at them at some point. And as a coward myself, who is afraid to talk in voice comms half the time, and whenever I do try to interact with people, they are aggro enough that I shut back down and I'm like, never again. I just want to talk to my friends and strategize with them. I can't trust anyone else to be civil. Me playing Lifeweaver, even if I mean the best, I'm kind of worried about using his pull on anyone outside of the most incredibly obviously justified situations, like pulling someone out of a D.Va bomb or pulling somebody out of an Orisa ult or something like that. Like, any other time where I think I'm quote-unquote saving someone, I'm terrified that I'm going to make a big mistake where, like, oh, Reinhardt's about to Earth Shatter, and I pulled him over here, so he earth shattered a wall, and now he's out of position and he's pissed at me. Or, oh, I thought that Reaper was going to die, but actually he was setting up Death Blossom. Like, there's so many situations where one of your teammates could have a plan and you pull them out with this thing because you think you know better than them because you're pulling them out of position, but like, they went there on purpose. And there are going to be cases where you just blow it inevitably while playing this character, especially early on, or maybe forever in the lower ranks where people just kind of never learn potentially. So that sucks on its own level. But then there's the aspect where like, you could be completely justified and people will blame you and be mad at you. This will be a whole new level of people potentially being pissed at you for playing this character just because it's another thing to blame, essentially. Like, the number of times as support that I get accused of just like let's just like loop this trailer, I guess, for the sake of visuals, because good content. I don't have access to the character, and this is just an off the cuff thing. This isn't going to be a fucking video essay project right now. Like the number of times that people blame the supports for not healing or so on whenever they get themselves killed. Like, you don't think that they're going to see like, oh man, I was going to win that duel and you pulled me out of it, and they're going to blame you for saving their lives. Like, this will absolutely happen. I'm predicting such levels of horrifying toxicity tied to this character, and I'm so terrified. Both, like, I'm gonna be worried about people playing the character on my team because I don't know how they're gonna behave and what they might do to me, and I'm gonna be worried about playing the character because with the best intentions, I think I'm going to be tilting people in a way similar to like how I've seen like Andrew piss off Bastions while playing Mei because he puts up his wall in various contexts and they disagree with his use of the wall and think that he's throwing, and then he becomes the main character of chat that they all blame all match long. Like, this is that level of thing. But also, like, as somebody who plays all three roles, and I'm not going to say that I'm an authority or amazing at this game or anything, but I know that people who just play one role all the time constantly blame other roles incorrectly. Like, people don't understand healing when they don't play support. They don't understand line of sight. They don't understand like the number of ways that you sabotage yourself by making yourself unhealable or putting yourself in impossible situations that no amount of healing could ever save you from. They just think, oh, there are healers, they should be able to keep me immortal essentially somehow. Like, fundamental misunderstanding of healing. And similar stuff happens with DPS, similar stuff happens with tanking, and I'm worried about seeing a horrifying implementation of that idea where you as the tank have a plan, you know how to play this character, they're your number one character, you are in your element, and you have a support that thinks they know better about what you should be doing. Like, you're playing too aggressively, even though you're actually very carefully playing a corner, and you're playing forward very specifically because, like, you are Reinhardt or Junker Queen, and you need this angle in order to survive, so we need to take this place and take space in order for this character to work, and you need your teams to play around you and react correctly and support you and play fast and keep up with you, because if they stay too far behind or think that you're pushing, then we can end up throwing because you don't get enough support. But you need to get to this spot, you need this corner, because if you just stay in the open, you're going to die and get mowed down or something. Like, there's just a lot of game sense stuff that goes on with tanks that is really important to how they play, and it's different for every tank. And people are often very incorrect about how you should be playing, and even if it makes them more comfortable, like, you'd be essentially throwing if you played the way that they want you to play. So, like, there are levels of aggression that are necessary, and sometimes people take risks that are a bit more than you might be comfortable with, but you need to help them because, like, yeah, it's a head-to-head match. Everyone's going all out. Like, that's necessary. Absolutely, tanks can be too aggressive and just instantly die and throw and so on. But do you want to be stuck in the match with somebody who just decides they know better periodically and just repositions you? Because you know what's worse than a Rhine that might be a little too aggressive and pushing a little too much and getting his shield shredded and so on, but he's playing his corner and whatnot, is I support pulling that Reinhardt into your back line to quote-unquote save him. Now the Reinhardt is in the middle of nowhere, potentially behind your teammates, so now they're vulnerable and getting taken down. You just surrendered all of that open space that Ryan took by going there in the first place. You are only healing him very slowly with that little 65 clicky click thing that he does really slowly, so you're not exactly going to refill that Ryan very quickly to get him back up to full. So he can't just sit there in AFK waiting for you to heal him, so he's ultimately just going to have to run back in with whatever health he had anyway. But also now he's so far back potentially that the enemy team can just mow him down because he has to spend charge or shield energy just to get back to the corner he was trying to play in order to make this whole thing work. Like, it's just a lot. This is the fact that you don't consent to being pulled scares me, because of the fact that there's just so much involved in how your character works, and you can't expect everyone to understand how you're playing specifically. And so the idea that people could just fuck with you, like, this is going to be this is just going to be a thing all the time in lower ranks, bronze, silver, gold. Think about how this mechanic plays out in most matches where people fundamentally disagree about how to play the game, because we as a player base have an asymmetrical understanding of how this entire game works. We do not collectively agree on how this game is played. Nothing shows that more than the moment you introduce like a wrecking ball in a silver match and people don't know what the fuck to even do about having that as their tank, because they just want a Reinhardt that walks down the center lane and puts their shield up, and like that's just and so this becomes a thing where, like, much like how there's certain characters you get worried about in lower ranks no matter what, like I get worried if I see a wrecking ball in a low level match, or a Widowmaker, or a Tracer, or a Sombra, because I don't trust I'm worried about that teammate being able to effectively play what is a pretty high skill character when they are currently a low skill rank. I'd be concerned that they aren't going to be able to do that, just like how many Sombras are famously AFK because they're just running around stealthing for 20 minutes on a cool Metal Gear Solid adventure for so long that they're effectively not in the fights and not contributing. This guy, this specific ability sounds like it could be an absolute menace, where the moment people pick him in lower ranks, I'll be terrified how he's going to behave. I would love to be wrong about everything I'm saying in this video, especially since I want another support to play, and I want another support to have interesting interactions in this game. So please, I would love to be wrong about all this stuff. The thing is, you cannot change the whole system of whether or not people say... You can't change the thing where people are pulled to him without any kind of confirmation, because if you add a confirmation, that adds a reaction time that then the other player has to react to, which means they'll just die. If you in situations where you were saving them, they will just die before they have a chance to react to the fact that you pulled them. So they can't change that part, and so I feel like they might be opening Pandora's box here on just like average player knowledge and skill, and it might just be a terror for a lot of people for a while. I'm going to be very curious to see if my fears are justified, but also like whether or not he gets changed in the near future. I mean, people have had reactions to Kiriko's Suzu and to Ramatra's ult as being things that they're like, I can't believe this isn't in the game. How they're not taking this out. So who knows? Like, I have no idea even if an overall reaction would change the course of this character. But I will say, this is an interesting mechanic. In its correct use case, I would generally be happy to see it in the game. It is useful. It is incredibly interesting tactically. But people misusing it has such an ability to make this game frustrating to play that I am terrified. So there's my rant that went on for too long about this character. Looking forward to seeing how this turns out, I guess.